Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I do want to apologize for being a little absent this last month, but hey, I'm back now. I was in the process of working on a video where I just reviewed one book, but unfortunately, the book that I decided to review had a plot that could be summed up in a couple sentences. So instead of that, I wanted to kind of create a little bit of a hybrid video. It's going to be both a book haul video because I have several books here that I want to show you, as well as a sort of review or mini review, if you will, because I have several stories and books that I want to talk to you about that I've recently read. So it is going to be a bit of both worlds, so we'll see how this goes. This first section is going to be the book haul. So these are going to be all the books that I've recently picked up within 2 weeks. So starting with these over here, I have 3 books here that are part of a series or a collection, if you will. Unfortunately, I don't believe this is the entire series. There's one book that is missing, but these are the Weird Tales paperbacks that were published in the 80s. So this is number 1, and this features Scarlet Tears by Robert E. Howard. So the big reason why I decided to pick up this series is because 2 of these books have stories by Robert E. Howard that I have never heard of before and I do not have in my collection. And with me trying to build up my Robert E. Howard collection, obviously I needed to have them. This is going to be volume 2, and this is going to be The Night Ocean by H.P. Lovecraft and Robert H. Barlow. I have actually read a little bit of Barlow's work because I have a collection of his work that was published by Hippocampus Press, and The Night Ocean was included in that. So I got this one basically because I wanted the entire set. But that's also a very interesting story and a very good collaboration. If you've never read The Night Ocean, I do highly recommend it. The third and final volume that I have here, which is probably the most beat up one, but nonetheless, this is going to feature The Guardian of the Idol. This is going to be with Robert E. Howard and Gerald W. Page. I love the illustrations on all 3 of these. From all the research I've been able to do on these, I think there's only 4, so I will be trying to find the 4th and final one in this series. And I also should probably mention that the featured story that's stated on the cover is not the only story that's within these books. I will put the table of contents of each book on the screen so you can actually see what's in all of these in case you're wanting to collect these as well. This is going to be for the first volume. This is going to be for the second volume. And these are the contents for the third volume. And again, once I do have the 4th and final volume, I'm sure I'll be letting you guys know. So I am very excited to have those and dive into them. Now, the next book I am going to show actually came here last night. It just came in. So I'm very happy that it came in time for me to make this video. And unfortunately, you can't tell a whole lot from the front. Kind of see a little etching there, but I'll show you the spine so you can actually see. This is In the Realms of Mystery and Wonder, the collected prose poetry and art of Clark Ashton Smith. And if you couldn't tell there, it is published by Centipede Press. For those of you who are unaware of Clark Ashton Smith, he was a poet, a fiction author, and an artist. He did sculptures, he did paintings, he drew. The man was incredibly artistic. This is going to be the title page right there, and I do apologize if there's a bit of a glare. I'll try my best to fix that. And here is next. So the big reasons why I decided to pick this up is because, one, it includes all of his prose poetry, which is fairly difficult to find all in one volume. There are a couple Arkham House editions that include some of it, which you can find out there, but some of them are not in great condition. Some of them are missing the dust jacket and slipcase. Some of them have damage and whatnot. And they're incredibly expensive, which is one thing that I was looking at and I was actually looking to get, but then I decided to pick this up. There is also some prose poetry included in the Penguin Classics edition of Smith's that was published by S.T. Joshi. As you can tell, mine is missing the slipcase and the dust jacket, which is unfortunate, and there is some slight damage to it. Again, there's like a nick there, and there's I think a tear back here, right there. But that was the only way I was able to get this under $100, so that's pretty nice. And everything in it is still absolutely amazing. So I do recommend picking this up. At this point, I don't know how available these are, especially due to the price, but if you do enjoy Smith's prose poetry and are a Smith completionist, then this is definitely something you should pick up. This includes some letters written to Smith as well as memoirs written about Smith. This includes all of his artwork, or at least all of his surviving artwork, which includes his drawings, his paintings, and sculptures. And you have his prose poetry in here. So it is a very in-depth and very well-made edition. Obviously, anything published by Centipede Press is going to be of the highest quality. If you are interested in Smith and want to know more, I made a video about him, so feel free to check that out. If you want me to do an in-depth review and look into this book, please leave a comment down below and let me know. I would love to do so. Now, these next couple books I'm going to talk about are actually fairly inexpensive, which is always nice. You have to find a good mixture of expensive and cheap when you're book collecting. But this first one I picked up, it's just a small little paperback from the 60s. It's going to be Swords and Sorcery. And I will put a list of all the authors on here so that way you don't have to pause it. But the reason why I picked up this book is, one, it was very cheap. It was only like $5. But because of all the authors in it. Not only does it have 3 of my favorite authors, H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Clark Ashton Smith, but you also have Henry Kuttner, whom I have not read a lot of, but I am aware of his contribution to the Cthulhu mythos and the Lovecraft circle, so I'm excited to read more of him. Lord Dunsany, obviously. Then you also have C.L. Moore, who also is someone who I have not read a lot of, but I am excited to, because she was also part of the Lovecraftian circle. And Fritz Leiber are all in this book. Not to mention, you have an introduction, and this book was entirely edited by L. Sprague de Camp, whom I do believe wrote a lot of the Conan stories along with Lynn Carter, if I'm not mistaken. Not to mention, there is an illustration for each story within this book, so like there's one that I could find very quickly, or here's one more, why not? So a very nice collection. And again, with all 3 of my favorite authors in here, not to mention a lot of heavy hitters in the Lovecraft circle, it was something that I had to pick up. And again, very cheap. And these next 2 books are going to be by an author whom I wasn't very familiar with and had heard amazing things about, but never paid him any mind. And then I picked up this paperback, which is actually on the same shelf as the Sword and Sorcery book. And it's A. Merritt, and the book is Dwellers in the Mirage. And just look at that cover. Green's my favorite color, so I think the type of green used in this definitely drew my eye. I have not gone very far in it, but I read the first 3 pages in the bookstore, and I was blown away. I thought it was absolutely amazing, and I continued to do some research while I was in that bookstore, and I began to realize that he was an author that I should definitely continue to look into. And I just so happened to find another book in that same store called The Moon Pool. And I do apologize if there's a bit of a glare. This has a plastic protection slip on it, but I will do my best so you can see it clearly. It's a very beautiful book, and I read the inside flaps and the back, and I just knew it was something that I needed to have. 1 second, I need to make more coffee. So the final book that I picked up in the same haul as the 2 A. Merritt books and the Swords and Sorcery book is this. It's this little chap book, or what I would consider a chap book, and it's called No Way Street by Bruce Clements. So this is actually going to be the first book that I talk about in the reviews. So as of right now, this is going to be the review portion. So I'm actually going to be talking a little more about these next couple books that are coming up. So do keep in mind there are going to be spoilers for this book. So if you do not want any spoilers and you want to try to find it, absolutely go and find it. I will do my best to not spoil a whole lot, but at the same time, with it being such a short story, there's not a whole lot of leeway that I have. But anyways, the plot of No Way Street goes as follows. There is a man named Douglas, and he just so happens to be a serial killer. There are aliens who are wandering through the galaxy trying to find new attractions for their circus that travels throughout the entire galaxy. And they stumble upon Earth. While they're on Earth, they realize that humans kill each other, and the fact that they are able to kill each other because the human conscious is separated from other humans, while the alien consciouses are connected through this intricate web of, I suppose, feeling and thought. So the aliens do not kill each other, because if one dies, then it affects everyone. So the aliens are incredibly intrigued by the fact that humans not only can kill, but some actually possess the desire to. So they travel around Earth and they end up finding a man named Douglas, and they take him. However, they don't only take him, but they also take a part of an area that he was at that time, so that way he can have a habitat. So this habitat that Douglas has consists of his vehicle that he was driving at the time, a portion of the road which is called No Way Street, due to the fact that if you continue to walk along it, you eventually get to this wall of darkness. If you walk into the wall of darkness, you literally awaken sitting in the car. Then there's a ditch on the other side of it that is filled with water. And then on the other side of that, there are some trees, and then there's a small playground that has monkey bars, a slide, a jungle gym. There's also a bird bath that's part of the park. And that's essentially it. That is his habitat. So as I mentioned, the aliens that abduct Douglas are actually part of this traveling circus. And the reason why they abduct Douglas is due to the fact that he enjoys killing, and this is an experience that aliens never encounter. So it is intriguing to them. So because Douglas is such an oddity to them, what they decide to do is they create these simulations and scenarios where Douglas kills a member of the audience. Now obviously it's not real, but this is a way for the aliens to actually witness and also be a part of the experience. However, what's interesting about this is, again, none of it is real. And this begins to weigh on Douglas. Due to the fact that none of it's real, and the audience is just as in on it as he is, the act of killing begins to lose its luster because he's no longer killing anybody. As Douglas explains, it draws a lot of similarities to the act of hunting. You know, the hunter and the hunted, the dynamics of those two, and how if the prey is aware of your intentions and is still complicit in them, is it really hunting? So I think that's a very interesting dynamic that is touched upon within this book. But to go even further into the plot, Douglas was not the only human captured by the aliens. So on the night that Douglas was captured, he actually kidnapped a young girl and put her in his trunk. And he had every intention on killing her. That's why he actually took her to that park. And it was at that park where Douglas was abducted, along with the young girl whose name is Amy. So Douglas, when he is not performing in these scenarios, he is actually in his habitat with the girl that he was going to kill. And I don't want to go too far into the actual dynamic that they have, although it is fairly interesting. But needless to say, due to the fact that they are the only two humans, they do develop this weird kind of relationship where Amy is stunted by everything, so she suppresses everything and just kind of obliviously goes on this routine that she's created in order to cope. And Douglas is wrestling with his feelings on wanting to kill but also not, because there's no reason to it, there's no satisfaction. So without getting into every little detail of the plot, essentially Douglas continues to be put in these scenarios where he's compelled to kill, but he no longer wants to, due to the fact that he no longer feels any enjoyment from it. This basically leads to Douglas not wanting to kill in general, but being compelled to, and being put in these scenarios where the desire to kill is so great, even though it's nothing more than the equivalent of a cheap high. And the very ending I thought to be interesting, because him and Amy get into an argument. So the aliens decide to change the scenario, and instead of getting a volunteer from the crowd and having the audience watch, instead they replay the scenario of him abducting Amy. And at this point in the book, Douglas is so burned out that he no longer wants to kill, and especially Amy, due to the fact that she is essentially his only companion. And for the first time, he actually expresses emotion and feeling towards her. Not necessarily romantic, but he expresses that he no longer wants to kill, and he doesn't want to kill her. It essentially ends with that scenario being replayed and replayed, where he kidnaps her, he abducts her, he throws her in the trunk, he drives her out to the park, and he opens the trunk and he kills her there. while she's still bound. Except his thoughts are clearly expressed that he doesn't want to do it, and he tells himself almost as a declaration to Amy that I won't do it, I'll stop before the knife plunges down, and I'll save you. Does the scenario keep playing? Do the aliens manipulate him to do it every time? We just don't know, and I do think that's the beauty of this story. It's a fairly short story. You can get it read within a couple hours. It's that big. I thought it was a really good story. I'd highly recommend this. If you find this anywhere at a used bookstore or whatnot, I do recommend picking it up.